Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your patience and your very good insight. If I did do town hall meetings 2 years ago, the people in my district would have been at best ambivalent and probably pretty negative about any idea of further intervention in Syria. But a lot's happened over the last 2 years, and I can tell you from my town hall meetings, that's not what I'm hearing anymore. People are worried because if you watch the course of events, these events have become closer and closer to home. In San Bernardino, a lone wolf attack, but nonetheless inspired, if not indirectly directed by the people with ISIS, have got my constituents' attention. But I'm from Alabama. We believe in winning. We know you can't win unless you've got the right coach. Roll Tide. You can't win unless you've got the right coach. I'm not asking you to comment on the coach. And that coach has got to have a plan. And the plan's got to be a plan to win. And you've got to train the team to win on that plan. Now, my constituents come to my town hall meetings and say, where's the plan? The winning plan. This president has not articulated a plan at all, whether it's a winning one or not. So we're going to be changing coaches, changing presidents in a year. And once again, my question is not directed at who that should be. But if you were advising that next president of the United States on what the winning plan is, how we win this war, what would the elements of that plan be?
All right. So first, as an Alabama grad, let me say roll tide back at you.
There you go, roll tide.
So I tried to outline some of them with respect to Syria and then the global jihad and then the broader competition between regional powers in the Middle East. But again, these things will take time. It's a degree, it's a question of reducing our risk, denying the sanctuary. But these operations, if you think of it as a series of campaigns that eventually get to lead to a winning strategy that eventually lets you win the war, winning the war is going to take an awful long time until you get governance in the Middle East. And so then you have to think of it in terms of Syria campaign, Iraq campaign against the global jihadists in Libya and elsewhere to make sure, you're progressively defeating them while you, accelerate efforts in some areas. But again, the problem is just too big for a single knockout blow. Robert?
I think the biggest problem with our Syria policy is we have a strategy, which is to get to a new national unity government. We have no tactics to get there. It's like a hope. It's a wish. And it's been a wish since 2012. But we're not getting any closer, frankly. As I mentioned before, the Russian intervention probably pushes it even further back. So to me, the fundamentals of the strategy are we want an indigenous force in Syria and in Iraq able to eventually grind out, eliminate Islamic State and other extremists. I take the Congressman's point that al-Qaeda is still there. In order to do that, you have to have governments that basically promote national reconciliation on some level. I think we are seeing that emerge in Iraq. We are nowhere near it in Syria. And I think if the press reports of what I read of what General Petraeus said to the committee last week are accurate, I subscribe fully to the sorts of things that he was talking about in terms of putting pressure on in order to get to a serious negotiation. So far, the administration has declined to do that.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question, Ambassador. If we're going to rebuild that country, we have to rebuild it with Syrian people. Yet we've seen a wholesale outflow of refugees from Syria, I would argue probably the very people we need to depend upon to rebuild the country. Shouldn't we be pursuing a policy that brings those people back to Syria, closer to Syria, so that we can bring them into the rebuilding of that country and not continue to see these efforts to welcome them to places away from Syria?
I think you want to be careful here, Congressman. Why did they leave Syria? The opinion polls that I've read of Syrian refugees themselves, somewhere between 70 and 80% say they left because of the aerial bombings of their neighborhoods, the barrel bombs. And some fled the Islamic State, although actually the numbers that flee the Assad government's aerial bombing is much, much, much higher than the number who flee the Islamic State, as brutal as the Islamic State is. So you got to deal with that root cause in order to convince people to go back. There could be reconstruction. We might be able to find ways to generate the resources to help the country rebuild, but you can't do any of that as long as the war goes on. So I go back to what I said about that. With respect to keeping them closer versus farther, yes, there's a big debate about Syrian refugees right now. I would just say this. Having refugees in camps indefinitely, even near Syria, in Lebanon or Turkey or Jordan or Iraq, where there is no hope, also breeds resentment and actually helps the Islamic State recruit as well. And so as we, the Americans, think about whether or not we should take refugees, I think we also need to bear in mind that choosing not to take refugees plays into an Islamic State recruiting effort. And we will have to judge a whole series of factors as we make that decision about refugees.
Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for